Hi, I'm Deanna Kizis, and I'm the host of the Psoriatic Arthritis Club, a new podcast from CreakyJoints and the Global Healthy Living Foundation about the ups and downs of managing psoriatic arthritis. If you've been listening to our first couple of episodes, then you know I've been living with psoriatic arthritis for 2 years, and I'm doing okay. I'm still having pain and flares, and honestly, it's been kind of a lot. I'm still learning how to cope with brain fog and fatigue, and I work, and I have an 8-year-old daughter. I'm not a pessimistic person, but I do admit that sometimes it's hard to stay positive about everything that this disease keeps throwing at me. The good news is that talking to other patients about PsA is so helpful. As you'll hear, Eddie Applegate and I have had more fun discussing PsA than you could ever think possible. And on a serious note, we talk about how there are no easy answers, but there is a lot we can learn when we lean on each other. As a patient, I'm finding that I need more tools that I can use when working with my doctor, and it's so important to build out a self-care toolkit. Just a reminder, I'm not giving out any medical advice. I'm not a doctor, just a patient, but there will be a rheumatologist on later in the show. I'm so excited for you to meet Eddie. This is the first time I've ever spoken with him, but I feel like I've known him forever. I honestly wish I had. We have to use these bodies,
I can't trade this in for a new model.
To the end. Yeah, I know, exactly. Yeah. I don't get, it's not a Subaru. I can't trade it in for a new one.
Yeah, there's not a lease on this one. I'm not getting a new one in a couple of years of the down payment.
You bought it. Eddie is 45 years old and lives in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. If I'm sort of a PsA rookie, then Eddie is a total pro. He's had psoriatic arthritis for almost 20 years, and he has a wealth of knowledge. I walked away from this interview inspired and ready to start putting his advice into action.
I have a diagnosis story that I like to say is it's a little different than people because it was a successful diagnosis early on, which is I have heard horror stories from many people. In my early to mid-20s, I had started to experience a lot of pain and stiffness, especially in the mornings. I would sit in the tub and soak in the tub for like 30 to 45 minutes just to loosen up, especially my hands. My hands were, and still proved to be a bit of an issue. And then I started a job in a town that was about an hour away from where I lived. So I had a fairly long commute every morning, and getting out of the car, I would feel it in my legs. Getting up, I could tell that there were issues there. So I asked my mother if she thought that I had arthritis. And she's like, well, you may, but you have to go and get a referral first before you could see a rheumatologist. So I decided to go to an urgent care clinic. I didn't have a primary care physician at the time. The doctor looked at me, looked at my symptoms, looked at my face because I still had some psoriasis on my face at the time. I had been previously diagnosed with psoriasis, and within a minute or two, he said, "Oh, you have psoriatic arthritis." Mm-hmm. An urgent care general practitioner.
That's great. You're so lucky.
I call myself a unicorn for that.
Yeah,
I know now how lucky I was.
You're not lucky because you got psoriatic arthritis in your 20s, but you are lucky, right?
Getting diagnosed easily and getting to see a rheumatologist within a month, I know that both of those are, almost unheard of in real life.
I was fast and mine took years.
Yeah.
How did you cope with that diagnosis? Because you're fairly young to get it, right?
It was a little surprising. I was like, wow, I've got arthritis. That's when I kept hearing, oh, you're too young to have arthritis.
Yeah.
I think every one of us, no matter what age we are when we are diagnosed, I think that everyone is probably told at one point in time, you're too young to have arthritis. Mm-hmm. But I think I caught it near the beginning because I was okay-ish at the beginning, but then it kind of, not long after, or right around the time of diagnosis, things seemed to be getting worse and worse all of a sudden. Like my joints were a lot more painful. Getting up from a seated position or a crouched position would get tougher and tougher. Walking would become and look more labored, not just become more labored, but, my parents and my sister said you walk like an 80-year-old, which when you're not yet 30, that's not what you normally want to hear.
No.
That's when my skin started getting worse as well. Uh-oh. And I got it all over my face pretty much. And being a guy, you can't hide behind makeup.
It doesn't work for that anyway. You know how it is.
I like hearing that. I don't feel
it's true. It'll just peel right off. It's kind of like I remember when we were in high school and kids would put that flesh-colored pimple cream on, and you'd be like, "Wow, you have a giant beige spot on your face with pimple underneath." It's like that. You're just like, "What is that anyway?"
Okay, good. I don't feel like I've missed anything then, so I feel a little bit better about that.
It's so distressing, and I had a similar experience. So what happened when you went to your doctor and started saying, okay, here are my symptoms? How did you get good care? Because as you know, sometimes you have to push a little bit. I don't know if you did.
I got lucky with that first doctor. He was really good. He made sure to ask me a lot of questions and tell me a lot of things. So my doctor was going to start me on a biologic, and I was going to take it in conjunction with an oral medication for my disease. It's called methotrexate, and it was fine. My symptoms didn't get worse.
Okay.
I don't feel that they got better, but They didn't get worse. So at best, I was able to maintain.
Yeah, that's the part that I personally find really frustrating, is that you get the diagnosis, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to improve right away. It can take a really long time.
That was me at the beginning, and didn't feel like I was improving. Because usually whenever you go to the doctor and you're sick and they give you medication, you're like, oh good, I'm going to be better in a week. I take this antibiotic and 10 days later I'm going to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work that way. And that's a mindset that we don't realize, that we may not get back to pre-diagnosis days, but whenever you do kind of stay where you are, and this is something that I've learned over my almost 20 years, that's when you have to say something.
Mm-hmm.
It all goes back to that communication. It could be that the medication you're on is not working and is not good for you, and so something else needs to be tried. But it was very disheartening for me at the beginning. I was not officially diagnosed with any sort of depression, but I was not in a good mental state in my late 20s and early 30s because I was in pain all the time. I had gained weight because I was not moving. I felt that pain of just plateauing, and you're just kind of wondering if things are going to get any better. And I wish I would have known then to speak up more or talk with someone. There are many resources out there. I hate that I didn't know that. I do feel like I lost time.
And so what turned it around for you? Because it sounds like you were really kind of plateaued for a long time.
I got lucky with number 2. And I was on that medication for 12 years minus a 6-month try on a different one.
Does that mean that the medication that you're on right now is not working as well?
A little over a year ago, I had started having some pain in my knee and in my ankle that was new. And so I told my doctor about it. And he said, well, it could be that your current medication may not be working anymore, may not be as effective anymore. We can look into changing your medication, because he is all about, if it's not working, let's try something else. I've been very lucky with my doctors. I know that. None of that would have happened if I had just said, oh, I'm fine. Because, they always say, what the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You don't want to be stuck in something that's not working because you're afraid to say something. Because if you don't say something, then nothing's going to change. If a change is needed, if you feel a change is needed and you don't say anything, the doctor's not going to know.
Mm-hmm. They're not psychic.
Exactly. They're wonderful people, but clairvoyance is not something that is taught in med school.
Right. So this conversation is really important. I like the idea of really letting your doctor know what's going on and what's bothering you. And also trying to figure out that balance of, am I really feeling as good as I can? Am I not? What does feeling well with this disease even look like? We asked rheumatologist Dr. Grace Wright how she thinks about this.
If you feel much better, then oftentimes a patient will say, I'm better enough, because I was so worse before. But my goal is to have you be well. So treatment inertia is really a very difficult thing because it occurs on both sides, the patient and the physician. I may accept too little for you. You may accept too little for yourself. How do we shift that? And part of that, I find, is transforming how we rethink possible. So I always sort of say to myself, I have a big kitchen analogy of things that I put in the kitchen cupboard and push to the back, and I kind of forget about it and say, well, it's there, it's going to last for forever. And we sometimes do that with patients, and patients sometimes do that with their symptoms, where they just accept that it's going to be there and it's going to be there all the time. So I go through this exercise of pulling things out of the back of the cupboard, of taking a patient, sort of stepping back and going, are they really as good as they can get? What are the things that we have now that we didn't have 3 years ago or 2 years ago or 10 years ago when they got to this state? And it really forces me to rethink and then have the conversation with the patient to say, you don't really have to have 5 swollen joints all the time. Perhaps maybe you can think about being able to walk around the block rather than having to walk and stop every 10 steps. But part of it really is me re-envisioning your possibilities, because it's not often easy for the patient to know that there are other options, that there are additional things that can be done to change their lived experience.
A lot of what Dr. Wright shared reminds me of this conversation we've been having on this podcast about minimal disease activity. I'm still learning about it, but my understanding is that it can be a way for doctors to assess how our PsA is doing by looking at a range of our symptoms, a way to make sure that things are getting better across the board. I wanted to get Eddie's take on this because it sounded like he was doing well with his PsA for a long stretch of time. So we were talking about this concept of minimal disease activity, and I'm wondering, would you think that you are there right now? And if not, what would that look like to be there?
I think when I first started medication number 2, I believe I was in minimal disease activity there for a number of years. I know I'm not in full disease activity. I don't feel like I did pre all of that, but I don't feel as good as I did right after I started that. So if minimal is full, then I'm probably at about 3/4 of a tank.
So you have 25% to go.
Yes.
Okay.
I've noticed more recently. Within the past year and a half, I've noticed that pain comes more, stays a little longer. And then when you feel the aches and the pains and you see the swelling and the knots kind of creep back in more, it is a little discouraging, but you just kind of realize that I'm still able to function. I'm still able to do a lot, but you notice it more. And I think that's when you're not in minimal disease activity when you notice it. When you're not thinking about it as much, because you're not noticing as much, then you kind of realize it. Yeah.
Minimal disease activity for me is when I can remember my own friends' names.
When I can get out of the car without grunting.
When I can eat a lollipop without shattering my own jaw.
When I can take the top off of the 2-liter bottle by myself without any help and without feeling it right after.
Yeah, if I don't have to hand my daughter the string cheese to open for me, then I'm in minimal disease activity.
Exactly.
You've been dealing with this for a long time, and you advocate for really good health care. What would you say to someone who's been living with this or maybe, is new to this?
Definitely talk to your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
let your doctor or medical professional, because it could also be a physician's assistant or a nurse practitioner, let your medical professional know how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. Don't try to sugarcoat it. You don't get extra credit for being a martyr on this. Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. No.
Yeah.
If your pain's an 8, say your pain's an 8. You're not going to get extra credit for coming in and saying, oh, I'm just at the 3 today and I'm still able to tell them, be honest.
I had to learn that the hard way, to be honest. I've actually said out loud, someone close to me is like, you really need to call your doctor. And I heard myself say, I don't want to bother them.
I know. So I'm glad that it's not just, a Southern culture mindset. It's everywhere because we're all like, oh, I don't want to bother the doctor. I don't want them to think that they're going to think that I'm just a complainer.
I worry about that all the time. All the time. I also worry that people think that I'm making it up. That's like a big one. Because people can't see how bad I feel, I really worry that people think I'm just histrionic or attention seeking.
That's what I say. You may think, oh, she's just doing that for attention, or he just wants people to feel sorry for them. No, I don't. We know our bodies better than anyone, so why shouldn't we be our best advocate for this vessel that we know better than anyone else? Knowing your body and learning not to be afraid to speak up to the doctor. It's taking me a long time. It's taking almost 20 years to be able to say, nope. At my last telehealth visit, I said, my hand is hurting. You can't really tell, but I've got, they're swollen right here. My feet as well. And she said, okay, well, let's get a new baseline. Let's get some x-rays. Let's see how that goes. So if I didn't speak up, that was not going to happen. Keep up with your symptoms, even if it's, writing down on a piece of paper or a notepad or on your phone beforehand. This is how I've been feeling. Keep track of everything. There are wonderful apps that will help you.
I don't know about the wonderful apps.
Arthritis Tower is a wonderful app. What? I know. It is great to put in your symptoms, and it's great to look back and see how things can change over time. And on a certain day, like, oh, I felt bad here. And it's great if you switch medications. So then you can see, okay, let's see if this medication is working. But if you're a writer, write it down. Just have some way so you don't forget, because a lot of times we'll also get amnesia whenever they go to the doctor's office because they forget everything that's been happening. You're on your drive over there. All right, my feet have been hurting for the past 2 weeks. I've been extra tired. I felt this. And then you get to the office. How are you feeling today? I'm fine.
Oh, I've totally forgotten. I have brain fog anyway, so it's amazing I'm even here right now.
And then we get in there afraid to tell the doctor how we really feel. So if worst comes to worst, write it down and go, here.
Yeah, right.
You don't want to say it, just go, here you go. Here's the paper. This is how I feel.
You know everything. I'm so happy. I told you that Eddie has a wealth of knowledge, and he's got a lot of support to give, right? So before we wrapped up, I got a little bit more of his wisdom.
Learn what you can and can't do. Mm-hmm. If there's some things you can't do, are there things to make it where you can do them? Are there little life hacks? Are there tips? Are there tricks? Are there aids that will help you to do that? Don't be completely frightened. Is it scary? It's absolutely a little bit scary. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It'll scare you at times, but it's, your life isn't over. Mm. And I think that's where learning your limits, learn what you can and can't do. Because learning what you can do, I can do this, I can do that, I can still do this, I can still do that. Focus on the can. Mm-hmm. I think too often, and I know that I'm guilty of it as well, I can't go and do this. I can't do that. It hurts too much for me to do this. Well, what can I do instead?
One of the things that I also like about that is that there are some things that I've found that I can do that have become new, very passionate interests of mine. Mm-hmm. I don't think that Zumba is in the cards anymore, but my vegetables are amazing. So, yeah. And I didn't know that I would actually enjoy gardening as much as I do and get as much out of it, and also have it actually help keep me in shape. So there have been things that I've focused on. It is self-care.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times people forget how important self-care is. This disease is more than just a physical disease. It can take its toll on you mentally and emotionally as well. And so you do have to make time to recover, just take a holistic approach to yourself, mind, body, soul, and just, so I'm soaking in the tub. That's one of my self-care is like, I need to soak in the tub because whenever I watch House Hunters and they go, oh, I don't need a tub, I just need a shower. I'm like, no, you leave that tub right where it is.
It just occurred to me, I do have this friend who, when I'm really upset about something, she does tell me to make a list. And on one side of the list are the things that I can't control, right? And on the other side of the list are the things that I can. And then she says, okay, now turn your attention to all of the things on the right side of the list. And that really is so helpful to me.
Because we too often focus on that negative. My mind can be just a dark cave of negativity, and it's just you have to fight that. Mm-hmm. You've got to realize that there is some happiness, and like what I can do, and am I hurting today? Yes. Can I still sit and do my New York Times crossword puzzle app on my phone? Absolutely. Sit in the tub and soak for a little bit and just relax for a little bit. Can I do that? Yes. And so it's just those little things. Those are some things that I would suggest to people. There's no perfect roadmap that fits everybody. There's no one plan that fits everybody, but we've all been there in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And we all are just trying to get through this together the best that we can. We don't have all the answers. We're not going to have all the answers because there's so many things that we don't know. But listen, learn, ask questions.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I love talking to you.
I love talking to you as well.
Eddie, you're a delight. Thank you so much for talking to us. Seriously, it's been great.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you walk away from this conversation feeling as supported and validated as I do. I don't have close friends with chronic illnesses like psoriatic arthritis. Eddie and Diane and Lauren, who in the first 2 podcast episodes, were the first people with PsA I've ever talked to about what it takes to live with this disease. What I got from them is that you have to keep talking to your doctor about how you're feeling and to be really clear about where you're struggling. I also learned that it's okay that I'm going through various treatments. And I can know that just because I'm not feeling great yet doesn't mean I won't feel better at some point. And I really loved hearing about the life hacks that can help me cope. And most importantly, it felt so good to find out that even though we have a chronic disease like PsA, there is a community that can help. That includes the right healthcare provider, resources like CreakyJoints, talking to others who have this disease, and putting yourself out there to make new friends, which is what I did while hosting this podcast. That's it for the Psoriatic Arthritis Club. Thank you so much for listening.
This podcast was made possible with support from AbbVie. For more support and stories from other PsA patients like you, subscribe to the Psoriatic Arthritis Club or visit psoriaticarthritisclub.org. You can also visit CreakyJoints.org for the latest information and news about living better with PsA.